Hey guys, we're going to go over some literary terms that we're going to use when we talk about Shakespeare. Please make sure you're taking notes on the guided note-taking sheet provided for you because you're going to use that as a reference throughout the rest of the unit. So the first thing you need to know is a prologue. Prologue is an opening to a story that establishes the setting and gives background information, often some earlier story that ties into the main events that you're going to hear about. So for example, in Romeo and Juliet, within the first few lines of the play, we find out who the main characters are, where everything's taking place, and what the issue is that's driving these characters to do what they're going to do throughout the rest of the play. An act. An act is a division of a play. So for example, a regular novel has chapters, a play has acts. Shakespeare's plays always have 5 acts, and if you actually go to see a play performed, an act could take anywhere between 30 and 90 minutes, but if you're seeing a super short play, your act might only be 10 minutes. A scene is a division of an act. Scenes always take place in a single setting without any break in time, and you will have multiple scenes that make up a single act. You can have as many scenes as you want. Monologue and soliloquy. We have some similarities here, but these are also two very different things, so please make sure you take good notes on this. A monologue is when one character gives a long speech, but everyone on stage can hear what it is that they're saying. A soliloquy is when a character gives a long speech, but only the audience can hear what is being said. The purpose of both of these things is for the character to get across their thoughts and their feelings, but a monologue, everyone on stage and everyone in the audience can hear what is being said. A soliloquy, only the audience can hear what is being said. So a soliloquy, it's almost like you're getting into that character's mind, and you get to hear what's driving them to make decisions while everyone around on stage is sort of clueless. An aside is similar to a soliloquy because it's given by one character and no one else on stage can hear what is being said. One character just looks and speaks directly to the audience. The difference between an aside and a soliloquy is that a soliloquy is a long speech, and an aside is just a brief sentence or statement. So again, a monologue is a long speech given by one character, and everybody on stage and everyone in the audience can hear what is being said. A soliloquy is a long speech given by a single character, but only the audience can hear what is being said. And then an aside is similar to a soliloquy, where only the audience can hear what is being said, but an aside is very short. It's not a long speech, just a quick statement to the audience. Oxymoron is a figure of speech when you have two words that mean the opposite and they are shoved together. So, for example, jumbo shrimp. Jumbo and shrimp are opposites, like the meanings of the word. Jumbo means large, shrimp means small. Shove them together and you talk about a large, delicious piece of seafood. Good grief. Good and grief are opposites, but you shove them together and you get Charlie Brown's catchphrase. So just two words that mean the opposite that get shoved together for some other purpose. A conceit. We're going to talk about this in more detail in class. For your notes, all you need to write down is that a conceit is an extended metaphor with complex logic in a passage. Usually a character will have some sort of conceit within a soliloquy or a monologue. And remember, if you don't know what a metaphor is, if you don't remember that, metaphor is when you compare two unlike things without using like or as. So conceit is just a really long metaphor. Irony. We've talked about this before, but just a refresher. You have 3 different types of irony. You have situational, verbal, and dramatic. Situational irony is when the opposite of what you expect to happen happens. So if somebody goes out and buys a gigantic dog, like a Great Dane, and then they come home and they name their dog Tiny, that's situational irony because the opposite of what you would expect to happen happens. Verbal irony is when the speaker means the opposite of what they actually say. So if the weather is really, really gross outside and somebody says, "Oh, the weather is so nice out," they're being sarcastic. They don't mean what they're saying. That's verbal irony. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows or is aware of events that the characters are unaware of. So for example, you watch a scary movie, you know the murderer is in the basement holding the knife. And you also see that the protagonist is opening the basement door and they're going downstairs in the basement, and you know the murderer's down there, and you're like, no, don't go down there, you're going to die. But they do anyway, and they probably die. So that's dramatic irony. You know what's going to happen, but the characters don't. Malapropism. This is something else that we're going to talk about in more detail in class, but for the purposes of your notes, what you need to write down is that it is when a character uses an incorrect word in place of a word with a similar sound. And this often results in some kind of like what they said doesn't make sense and it sort of sounds funny or silly. And we'll go over that more in class. Tragedy. Tragedy is what Romeo and Juliet is. Basically, it's a form of drama based on human suffering that invokes in its audience a feeling of catharsis. Basically, what catharsis is that you get to feel the negative emotion that the characters feel, but you're safe at home at your house, and you know that these things aren't actually happening to you. So people watch scary movies because they like to feel that feeling of fear and get that rush of adrenaline, while knowing that they're like comfy on their couch and that there isn't a murderer in their basement with a knife trying to kill them. Okay, hamartia or hamartia, however you want to say it, they're both right, is also known as a tragic flaw. It is when the protagonist has some sort of personality trait that causes their downfall and, creates some sort of tragedy. So two common examples would be extreme pride or arrogance. It's just some sort of personality trait that you have that leads to your downfall. A pun is a form of wordplay which suggests two or more meanings of a word by exploiting these multiple meanings, and they are intended to create humor or rhetorical effect. So think of puns as like dad jokes. A gossip is somebody with a great sense of rumor. Rumor sounds like humor, but gossips also tell rumors, so it's supposed to be funny. Without geometry, life is pointless. If you know anything about geometry, you have to have points to make lines and to make shapes. So if you don't have points, geometry doesn't exist, but it's also a play on words because the other meaning of life is pointless. It means that, there's no purpose in living. Allusion. This is something we've talked about before, but just a refresher, an allusion is a figure of speech that references a well-known person, place, historical event, literary work, myth, religion, works of art, some sort of history, and basically allusion just adds depth to whatever it is that you're reading. If you know what they're referencing, it will give you another layer of meaning and you'll just maybe enjoy it more. So, for example, Taylor Swift's song Love Story mentions a boy, and she refers to him as Romeo. That is an allusion to Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so those are some of the literary terms that you need to be aware of. Please make sure that you took your time taking notes so you can reference that guided note-taking sheet throughout the rest of the unit. If you have any questions, come to class with them, and I will see you later.